Hello everybody. In today's video, I wanted to be able to take a moment and talk about my journey in sadhana so far, what called me to it, and what kind of called me onto this path in the first place. So I explained in a previous video, but I'll explain here again. My first real connection with, questioning God before growing up, not having a religion, was in my summer going into my senior year of college. So in the summer 2021, I was lifeguarding at a Christian camp, and I was also doing landscaping around there. And I myself, I didn't identify as Christian, even though my grandparents, my mother and my father kind of came from that type of background. I myself just never had gone to church and never really had deeply questioned. And it was one day when I was cleaning the pool, and it's kind of a funny story because nobody has actually ever taught me how to clean the pool. When I was there, it was just kind of, hey, you're a lifeguard. My first time being a lifeguard. You're also the manager of the pool. Have fun cleaning it, doing all that. But I was out there, I was cleaning the pool, and a thought occurred to me. I was like, well, what is God? I thought about what have occurred before the Big Bang, and Big Bang in my mind was just like whatever was there before when there was nothing. And then I thought about that, and I closed my eyes and I thought about nothing. And well, the idea of nothing alone itself contradicts itself, because the idea of nothing is something. That itself is an idea. And then I questioned, well, then who is this observer having this idea of nothingness? Because that itself is something too. And then that own contradiction created the universe, created consciousness and all its matter. And that's the way that I saw it. I thought in my mind, I'm like, oh, that seems to make sense to me. Just given everything that I had learned in my life and seeing things, kind of from a more scientific or even like quantum physics approach at the time. And then it was probably leading up towards the end of that summer, going into my actual senior year of college, I first began to watch Sadhguru videos, and my first reaction, to be honest, was like, who is this person? Like, I didn't understand. I'm like, is this person Muslim? I don't know. Let me watch. And just because I saw I thought it was a turban the turban that was wrapped around his head, and was my first presumption. And then upon listening and like having an open eye, I'm like, I really felt very connected with what he was saying, and what he was saying really seemed to make a lot of sense. And from then on, I realized, oh, this is Hinduism, and this is yoga. And I slowly that year began to learn more, and kind of came to my winter semester. In January, I had that whole month off, and I was supposed to travel abroad to London and Dublin. But unfortunately, because of COVID, it was back there. It was for round 2, and so they canceled all that. And instead, I used that time to learn about Ayurveda, learn about health and nutrition, and I completely decided to change my diet. I became vegetarian in this time. And it wasn't until after college when I ended up getting a job where that was a software development job that brought me to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I really began to question, because I was like, I feel like I'm learning a lot with learning all the different aspects of yoga. I was doing all of them except the yoga asanas, and I also was my pause was, I was like, I feel like if I want to understand this further, my calling is to worship something worship one of these divine figures, one of these deities. And I remember texting a friend that at the time, and they were just kind of like, what are you talking about? It led me to a path for at least 3 months, I was praying to Jesus and all that. I was going to churches. I was talking to Mormons as well. But I kept on, I'd have more questions, and, they would just refer me to the book or tell me like, oh, well, God hasn't revealed that to us yet. And some of my questions were just as simple. I was like, well, how do, aliens find a path to God? Does Jesus go to each of the planets in a different form? right? Like, how do are all the other planets just, they have no access to God? Or is that where Jesus, is that where he has been all this time, is going to these other planets, right? Like giving them salvation? Or are we the only planet that has salvation? I'm like, that's very egotistical. I'm like, this makes sense when, there was a concept that Earth was the center of the universe, but now that we know that's not the truth, it kind of made me pause. I'm like, well, Christ would come in human form for humans, or God would come in human form as Christ for humans, but there must be forms beyond that. And so that's why that's what kind of delved me into understanding Hinduism, which actually kind of delves into the different heavenly planets and the forms that reside there, and the concept that, there is this heaven, there is this heaven ruled by Christ, but there are other heavens beyond that, other heavens that kind of surpass just the desires to love, but go beyond to the point where you actually want to fully understand how this whole universe is created, how these heavens operate, because you have to imagine that heaven, the learning doesn't stop there. That's just the next step for people to go, but there's going to, of course, be grounds to continue learning and have spiritual teachers there, and eventually there are going to be people that are going to want to learn how does this operate, how does even this spiritual teaching and the passing off of knowledge operate. So that's where I branched off into Hinduism, and I saw that there were more answers here for me, and it seemed like everything was explained rather than just kind of grasping and making assumptions based on just things that are written in the Bible. I would also go on to say, during this time too, it was actually when I was praying to Christ, I continually was praying to Christ for truth. And I was praying also for my loved ones, but I was praying primarily to Christ for truth. I was like, God, show me the truth. And I was saying, Christ, show me the truth. Like, is this the right path? What is it with Hinduism and Buddhism? Like, everyone seems so peaceful, and it seems like the people are able to accomplish these like wonderful feats, and also incredibly peaceful people. So it's like, I had all these questions, why is it that it only has to be through you? There's only this one way for people to reach salvation, to reach God. And that's what eventually led me to purchasing mala beads. And there was the time after this, my experience with Christ was the summer of 23, the winter of 23. And it was the summer of 23 that I began chanting the name of the Divine Mother. It was first because I was between understanding Hinduism and Buddhism at the same time, and I was praying to both Mahavidya Kali, or not Mahavidya Kali, but the primal mother goddess Kali, and her 10 Mahavidyas. And I was also praying to Matara, when I say Matara, I'm talking about one of the Taras in Buddhism. There's the difference between Tara in Hinduism and then Tara in Buddhism, and I was praying to one of the green variants of Matara in Buddhism at the same time. And so it was kind of like in the mornings I'd pray to the one goddess, and then my way back home from work I'd be chanting 108 times Kali mantra, Om Kali Maha Kali Kali Ke Parameshwari Sarvananda Kale Devi Narayani Namustute. Sorry for that last pronunciation. It was Namustute. We'll try that again. Om Kali Maha Kali Kali Ke Parameshwari Sarvananda Kale Devi Narayani Namustute. Okay. And I was chanting that on my way home from work. And when I would get home, I would kind of continue my learning during this time. And it proceeded to me eventually, through doing this sadhana, learning and connecting more with Bhairava and learning more about actually, I was going to say learning more about traveling to Nepal, but actually my decision to travel to Nepal was really more so made on a whim. I didn't actually know much about Nepal before booking it. I was interested in India. I didn't know anything about Nepal, but I saw the trip and there were two options that I could have chose from the website that I was booking on. It was basically a website where they would book your tour groups and book your hotels and everything for you. And you would be like grouped with people that are around your age, so you wouldn't be completely alone on this journey. I traveled alone, but there was still like a group when it came to the hiking. But I realized that, okay, Nepal is primarily this tantric Hindu country, and I didn't know that really before. And as soon as I saw them, I'm like, okay, this is the perfect place. The one that was the India trip was going to be like 14 days, and I'm like, I don't know. I've never been on a trek before. That seems like too much. This other one was a trek that was for 4 days. I'm like, you know what? That seems right. I also didn't have much vacation time to take off. So I did settle for the shorter one. And I felt like, because Nepal is smaller, I feel like, this makes it easier to decide, what to do as compared to India, which is so massive, where I'd feel like I'd want to be in several different places and plan that trip to be much longer. So I planned that trip when I was living there in Santa Fe. And after I was relocated to Alabama, went to Nepal when I was in Alabama. And this began a very wonderful journey that I've already explained in a previous video, so I won't go so much in depth in this video, but I did want to make a few highlights. So the first place that I ended up going, again, like I did no research whatsoever when I was in Nepal. I just knew it was gonna be the place to go. I'm like, there's going to be the right things there. And so I was there in Nepal. I didn't even know like how to get to my hotel. Like I just did everything almost. It was almost like I was on the Amazing Race. I was like, it'll just all come to me. But yeah, I got a taxi from the airport to my hotel. I didn't sleep like at all when I was there, because on the flight to Nepal, I guess I kind of like fell into the yoga nidra state. I didn't even know that was a thing. But I slipped into the state where I was in between a state of sleep and non-sleep. So the whole trip felt like really like it was like 6 hours, even though it was a full 20-hour flight with a layover and everything like that. It just kind of breezed right by. And I had so much energy that day. And the first thing that I did is I took a cab to, there's the Kaal Bhairava temple there in Kathmandu, the big Shree Kaal Bhairava one. I'll probably attach a photo here or attach it to the thumbnail. But that was a really cool place. That place and that entire square, that's where, at least on the tour that I was on, he was telling me that that's where, different people like members of the Beatles and stuff had been there and all that, and Jimi Hendrix and all that. I was brought into a tea shop where they sold me this, this really cool painting, this mandala painting. And, this is the thing I'll say is like, I knew when I was there, like people were going to try to squander and this and that, but I'm just like, I felt like if people had to do that, like everything, it was more of a donation, because there were other people that were on my trip. They were all like, oh, did you also get brought into a tea shop? So I guess it's like a thing they do there where people get brought into tea shops and, give them tea, and then they try to sell you these like paintings, and they try to like upcharge you. I liked it, and I didn't mind the price that I paid for it. But yeah, I didn't really mind that. Like there was a little bit there of people trying to be like, constantly, hey, you need a ride. It's like, I told you like three times already, I don't need a ride. I just got here. But that was something that kind of, the way I saw it, probably different than most. I didn't see that as anything bad on them. I saw that as people need opportunity here. They're trying to, like the tour guide I was with, even though he was trying to ask me for like, you know what, he was trying to ask me for like 5 times the amount, you know, the other guy wanted to charge me. I understood it was coming from, you know, a place of genuinity, because there are people who just want better opportunities for themselves and their families here. And that's why there's a big part in my heart where like I want to be able to give back to Nepal whenever there's any success that comes my way. I want to be able to go back and visit Nepal as well. Because after this trip, like when I saw that there were still so many things that were destroyed, and I'm like, you know, you ask them, well, why is it like that? Oh, there was an earthquake like 7 years ago. It's like, or more. And it's like, it's sad they don't even have the opportunity to rebuild. And so like when I was there, I saw that instability, and I was like, I that's why now reflecting back and seeing everything that transpired in Nepal back in like September, I'm like, okay, I see why that happened. Like I saw when I was there, like there was this unrest and people were pointing fingers at their government. And I was like, this is, you know, this is really tough for them. And that's why, like, part of me, when I saw that, I'm like, you know, cheering them on, because they're like, they were able to accomplish something where they're trying to show we want a better future. The younger generation wants a better future for themselves, and they want to have a better leader in there. And I'm very happy about that, because I hope that next time I'm able to travel back, you know, it can be even more welcoming to tourists. But everybody there was so nice to me, and very nice and very welcoming. The one thing I want to share, because it was also a ginormous part of that journey. First, there was the Bhairava temple, and then there was a Kali temple that I had visited in between. That was kind of the place that we were trekking to, was going to be to this Kali temple. And the funniest thing is, again, I didn't know this until like a week before the trip, because I just booked this thing. I know I want to go here. And then I was like, oh my goodness, like, of course, it's a Kali temple. And that was a wonderful part of the journey, wonderful leg of the journey, because my legs were so shot from 3-4 days of hiking. I never had done that before. And I was just like hobbling down the steps in the morning. But then as soon as we went to this Kali temple, no one else that was in my group, they were all like tourists, but they were not there for the same reasons, spiritual reasons that I was. And so when it came to the temples, I was like ringing the bells, and I was leaving. I have a story about it on my channel, and I'll probably bring it up in another video, but I want to make sure I don't extend this one on too long. But basically there was this eye of Shiva stone I was carrying, and this flower I was given by there was this elderly woman that came out of a temple, and she was chanting something, and she was holding flowers, and she had approached me and my group members stepped back, and I was like, what? She just wants to give us a flower. And so I walked forward, she gave me the flower, and I was like, okay. She was saying something I didn't understand, probably in Sanskrit. And so I took the flower, and then I was like, okay, I'll take this to the temple for her, because we were going on to the temple, and so I assumed that's what I should do with it. And so I left that there with the eye of Shiva at the foot of the Kali temple, and rung the bell. And then as soon as I did that, my legs and all the pain that I had, it completely vanished. Like I couldn't feel my legs anymore. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like I could still feel my skin was completely burnt. So I could still feel that pain, but my legs were feeling wonderful, where I just started running up the steps. And it was the last day. Like, I don't know how I have all this energy, but this is wonderful. And then after this whole trip, when we came back to Kathmandu, the next day, it was actually like such a miracle for me, because I thought that I was going to be leaving the day after this trekking, but my mind got confused, the dates of flights and everything, and how like Nepal's one day ahead of us, and everyone out there is a day ahead of us. So I had an extra day, and so I was able to go and visit there's a Shiva temple in Nepal, in Kathmandu. I'm blanking on the name right now, but it's like that main Shiva temple there. And so I booked that, and there was another girl that was in that hiking group with me that was also going on this. And I'm happy that I went with her because it would have just been her. So it was good that I ended up going with her. But we ended up going to the Shiva temple there. And before we were going, I already had booked everything. They were like, hey, by the way, they might not let you in. And they were talking to me. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, Hindus only. And I'm like, well, I've been chanting ththese mantras. Like I have the mala, and I took it out. At the time I had a full Rudraska mala. I didn't even know, I didn't know beforehand that until like I got to Nepal, oh, this Rudraska mala is here from Nepal. That's so funny to see. There was like a TRS video, I think, to some guy he had in his podcast was from Nepal, and he was selling Rudraska. And I was like, no way. I'm like, the Rudraska I have are the same. It's also from Nepal. But yeah, those actually, that mala bead broke once I started a new sadhana process. So now I have these riverstone malas also from Nepal, as you can see. And back to the Shiva temple. So I was being told that, I'm like, well, I am Hindu because I practice, like I'm vegetarian. I'm like, I know, I feel like that makes me very, like, I'm a very strong devotee. And they were like, no, you like that, like, you have to have like proof of it. And I was like, what do you mean proof? And I'm like, is there like a card or something? And the girl I was with, she was Australian, but her parents were both from India. And so, she was like, I don't have a card. She's like, what do you mean? She's like, well, he's Hindu. Like, why can't he go in? That doesn't make any sense. And so there was a ruling on that, but there was no card, of course. So it was really just a basis of, and I understood, like, because I really did. It was like, you don't want to have tourists go into a temple like that, take photos, and just walk all through it. It does make sense. But it definitely hurt because I was mainly going there, like the Shiva temple, that was a big deal for me. And yeah, it was basically just, by skin color, because they wouldn't be able to tell if somebody was Hindu or if they were Christian or if they're Muslim. It was just, or where they were born even, is just based upon like the color of skin. So I did try, and by try, I mean I did. I, took off my shoes. I was walking in with this girl, and, I just walked right in, and I stepped foot in the temple, and then there was a guy with from the military holding a weapon, and he was chill, but then there was an older guy that was not chill, and he was like, hey, no, you get out. And I was like, so yeah, and that's the thing is, a normal reaction would be like, oh, my bad, let's get out. But when I stepped foot inside the Shiva temple, I was filled with no fear, and I knew I was meant to be there at that time. I was just felt so, I hope it doesn't come off arrogant, but I felt so filled just with, this is the right thing to say. I looked right at the soldier and I said, this is ridiculous. I said, your government is not your God. Then, that just resorted to him being like, out. And he wasn't, the thing is, the soldier was young, and I could tell he was not upset at me, and he kind of understood what I was saying. So that's why, like, it didn't feel wrong to say that, but I wanted it to be heard. And then I left the temple, and then I was distraught though. I had this, like, it was a sense of fearlessness in me, is what I can say, like stepping foot in that temple. And so I was going around and part of me feels bad because I'm like, there were people there, like the sadhus and all these different people and the agoris that I would have loved to talk to and had conversations with, but I was filled with this like rejection of like, I'm not meant to be here type of thing. And so I was just going up to them and I was like saying, this doesn't make sense. Why are the rules like this? Like, I'm a practicing Hindu. It shouldn't have anything to do with skin color. I should be allowed to go in that temple. And I'm like, I know it's no one's fault here. It's just a silly rule made by the government. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. But But again, I was like, I get it though, because you don't want to have, just tourists come in and just, go in your temple and disrupt things and, take photos, because it's not about that. And so shortly after, I was walking around this area. It was a beautiful area, a beautiful space. There were monkeys and stuff there as well. And I went and got my shoes back on and caught back up with the tour guide and the girl. She got out of the temple. And afterwards, we walked to the back of the temple, and this was the first and only time I've ever seen it was a dead body, and they were doing a cremation and ceremony right outside the temple. And the girl I was with, like, thank heavens I was with her, because she was a doctor. And so she just took a photo, and she's like, oh my gosh, it's a dead body. She's like, I didn't mean to take that photo, I had to delete that. But the thing that was nice is that she was a doctor, because it freaked me out. Like, at first, I'm like, I've never seen a dead body before, but she was a doctor, and so she'd seen this before. And so it was like I was meant to witness that with someone like that, like, who, because for me at first it was kind of scary, but I was at the Shiva temple, so it was like for me to get over fears. And it was just very heartwarming that I had someone there that, like, had seen it before, and it was like, it was nice. And then she left off to her flight, and I went to, there's a Hanuman temple that is also close next to the Shiva temple. And so then I went there. And so it was really kind of like this moment of me having all this, like, anger and, like, kind of resentment, almost, oh, I couldn't go in there. And I felt upset because, like, the tour guides were trying to, oh yeah, you can totally go in, you can, even though I was looking up the rules online. They're like, oh yeah, you could. But I'm happy I went there anyways. I felt like I was meant to, and meant to see that. It was like just a part of growth, growing up. And then, yeah, filled with that kind of, like, ego and a bit of anger, I went to the Hanuman temple. And there again, I basically just, the rest of the money that I had in my wallet, I had made sure I had enough to get home, but this was the last thing I was going to do. I purchased all the bracelets I could from a vendor, and they were all beautiful, and basically let everything go at that point. The rest of the money, I have like 2 things of currency in Nepal that I kept as a souvenir, but at some point I want to go back and, even give that back and give more back, because the experience forever changed me. And yeah, I'll talk more about in another video about my experience with Bhairava and the sadhana that I've been doing with Bhairava. I've done sadhana for Batuk Bhairava, Akshobhya Bhairava, and as well as Bhairava's other 8 forms. Without further ado, Jai Mahakal.